And so when people ask, can people really change? Can people really grow? Absolutely.
Mm.
But not everybody does because not everybody is willing to do the work. And the truth is,
Yeah.
this isn't sexy, right, Maria? This isn't sexy.
Mm,
It takes work.
yeah.
That's the truth. It takes work.
And yeah, definitely. And it takes courage, as you said, and humility. And I think, and I know from my own perspective of working with leaders, for example, and trying to help them grow as a leader, it takes the same elements. It takes the courage to look at yourself. It takes the humility to look at yourself, to grow, to change maybe what you've been doing or examining what you've been doing and how maybe that's getting in your way. Hey, everybody, welcome to Finding the Upside. I'm so happy you chose to join me today. I am in the studio and have a very special guest, Mandy Keene. Hey, Mandy.
I'm so excited to be here. Hi, Maria. Hi, everyone.
So excited to have you here. So, before we get started, I just wanted to briefly introduce Mandy, and then I'm going to turn it over to her for her to share a little bit more of her journey and her background. But Mandy is a personal empowerment coach. And Mandy uses a lot of personality assessments to help understand and help her clients understand themselves. And I'm going to talk to her and ask her a little bit more about how she uses those tools. But Mandy has been coaching for 23 years and has an amazing journey and experience with lots of different types of people. You've been able to work with people of all ages, all backgrounds, many business types. Mandy, could you share a little bit more about your journey and what you do and a little bit about that for us?
Thank you, Maria. It's an honor to be here. I love and adore you. I have so much respect for
Thank you.
you. And I love the name of this show because we all need to look at the upside of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've had the privilege and honor. I feel very blessed. I know not everybody gets to experience finding their calling and their passion at a young age. I always like to acknowledge and thank my mama. I grew up
No.
in a household. You know how some people grew up in a really religious household? I didn't grow up religious. I grew up where self-help was like our religion. And my
Mm,
mom was a huge self-help junkie. And she bought me a ticket to a Tony Robbins seminar when I was 18 years old. And I became hooked and traveled around the world with Tony and became a coach at the prime age of 21. I remember seeing an
wow.
Instagram meme that said, I wish I had the confidence of a 25-year-old life coach. And I was a life coach at 21, which now looking back on it is really funny because I didn't really have the life skill to be a coach, but I'm so grateful for my journey. I'm so grateful for that experience. And I've gone through a lot. I've had to earn a lot of
Mhm.
what I was taught 23 years ago in coaching and working with people. And it's my passion to help other coaches not make the same mistakes that I've made 23 years ago. I feel like it's part of my moral obligation. And you mentioned personality assessments. I love personality assessments. I use them in my coaching. I love empowering my business owner clients to use them with hiring because, man, if we can help people find the right seat on the bus, it's like everybody's
Mhm.
happier. We get a shine. And this is the type of education and training that unfortunately isn't being taught in school. And so I really like helping people find their superpowers, find what they're natural at, find what they're great at. And personality assessments are a great tool for that. Yeah, I'm so excited to geek out with you today and to talk more
Yeah.
about that and to dive in.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And also, like, when I met you and heard DISC was one of the things that you were using, I had the privilege in my corporate years to have an executive coach, and that particular executive coach also did DISC. So I was exposed to that stuff early on. I'm talking before more than 20 years ago. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, I love these. I love this. And I, like many business owners and as a consultant, talk to my clients about using those to help find the right people, find the right matches, but even to help them understand themselves and their team better. Because if we can identify the strengths that our people have, then we can understand how to work together better, how to collaborate better, how to put the right people in the right seats and all of that. So I Love that.
Yes, it just makes this path of being a human being, the more
Mhm.
clarity. I love my buddy Socrates, and I look at assessments as just a really powerful tool in helping us uncover knowing more of who we are and why the heck we do certain things. And how
Yeah.
come some things are so easy for you, Maria? They're super easy for you to do, but they're so dang hard for me to do. And when you had your amazing Marvin help set this up, I can tell that he has strengths I know I don't have. Right. And so
Mhm.
it's like,
Yep.
how come that is? How come there's certain people that are really good at certain things and some of us struggle at others, and taking the shame out of it and having us be able to laugh at ourselves and having compassion for each other. That's my goal. That's what I love about these assessments. And that's what I love about the kind of conversation.
Yeah. As you have told us, you've had the privilege of working with so many high level business owners, pioneering business owners in some cases. And curious, what has journey been like and how has that shaped your approach in coaching or how has that shaped your own experience as a coach?
It's really interesting. I feel really blessed and grateful because I've been doing this for so long. Like when you say 23 years, I'm like, "Yeah, that makes me sound
Mm.
old."
Started
um,
when you're 5.
yeah, right, exactly. I love my age. I'm 45 years old. I've been trying to be older most my life. So I actually
Mhm.
like being 45 because I was always the rookie and I was always the young one. So I actually enjoy now that I'm finally an adult. I don't feel like it, Maria. I still feel like a little kid, but anyway, so I feel very blessed and grateful for my journey because I have worked with incredible business owners and great minds like my friend Russell Brunson,
Mhm.
who I've known for 15 years. And so I've got to see them transform over a decade.
Yeah.
And the thing that I have found to be so awesome is witnessing and having a front row seat to growth and seeing
Yeah.
how people transform. And not everybody changes. Not
Mhm.
everybody, like you have those like relatives or those friends maybe from high school where it's like Groundhog's Day, where they're
Mhm.
talking about the same thing or they're complaining about the same thing. And I don't say that to sound judgmental or
Mhm.
condescending. It's just they're stuck, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
stuck in the same soap opera. It's like
Mhm.
the same saga. And
Same
then
storyline.
yeah, and I feel for people who have that. And so I feel very grateful to be in an industry where I've had a front row seat to these incredible, like you said, these pioneering minds and these people who are really committed to growth. And you've got to be courageous, because it takes so much courage, because it's scary. It's like constant unknowns. Okay, I'm gonna go into another unknown. I'm gonna go into another unknown. And it's been very inspiring and very thrilling because I get to see and witness how they've transformed. Like someone like Russell, like I've got to see
Mhm.
the man that he was 15 years ago is not the same
The
man that he
same.
is today. And
Yeah.
it's so awesome to witness that. And it's so awesome to see how that transformation takes place. And so when people ask, can people really change? Can people really grow? Absolutely.
Mm.
But not everybody does, because not everybody is willing to do the work. And the truth is,
Yeah.
this isn't sexy, right, Maria? This isn't sexy.
Mhm.
It takes work.
Yeah.
That's the truth. It takes work.
And yeah, definitely. And it takes courage, as you said, and humility. And I think, and I know from my own perspective of working with leaders, for example, and trying to help them grow as a leader, it takes the same elements. It takes the courage to look at yourself. It takes the humility to look at yourself, to grow, to change maybe what you've been doing or examining what you've been doing and how maybe that's getting in your way. And I guess it's almost the same in terms of the work that you do with their own personal growth. Is that right?
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
exactly the same.
And would you say that those are the two things of why people change? It's what, like, why do some people change and when people don't? You said do the work. I know it may be very layered, but what's like the switch that has to click for that to start?
Oh, such a good question. Such a good I love that I get to geek out with you. So it's I would say, oh my gosh, this is where I want a whiteboard. But I would say it's two main things. One, it's first, it's a solid commitment to growth. Like it is
Mm,
a vow and a commitment to growth. And not everybody has that. It's a commitment to growth mindset. It
mm.
is I am willing to do what the Imagine Dragons song, I love this song, "Whatever it
Yes,
takes,"
whatever it takes. Yeah.
right,
Hmm.
right? So, it's like that commitment to grow, so that's number 1 is and it's never ending, and it's infinite. We're never
Hmm.
done. My mom used to say growing up, "The top of one mountain is the bottom of the next,"
Oh,
right?
that's good.
So, it's that's number 1. The second thing, and this is why I talk about this so much is the second thing, and this is what I see missing so much in our culture, and this is what's missing so much in coaching, and this is why, and this is what I teach my coaches because this is what I see missing so much in the coaching culture. The second thing that is required, not like a nice thing, but required is compassion.
Mm,
Because the reason why compassion is required is I got to quote one of my mentors. His name is A.H. Almas. He says, unless compassion, it's impossible to see the truth unless compassion is present. So, what the heck does that mean? That sounds really beautiful, Mandy, but break it down. What the heck does that
yeah.
mean? So, in order to grow, we need to see things about ourselves, like you said, right? We need to recognize things about ourselves. I'll give you a personal example. So, for me, I've struggled with boundaries. One of the reasons why I've learned about my migraines is that they've been linked to my codependency issues, which is linked to me saying yes to things
Mhm.
when I really want to say no. So, what's that about? What was the hard truth that Mandy had to realize that painful truth? Gloria Steinem said, the truth shall set you free. Of
Mm.
course, it's going to piss you off.
Yeah,
So, we
so true.
first, so the truth that I had to realize is that the reason why I struggled so much with boundaries and the reason why I was having such a hard time saying no to the people in my life was because I didn't believe that I was worthy of love. I didn't believe I was worthy of setting those boundaries. Oh, ouch.
Mm,
That's an ugly, that's not comfortable. That's sticky. That's yucky. That's like that hot lava you don't want to experience. But I had to face that. Now, how did I face that? How did I let myself feel that and recognize that was because I had compassion for that Mandy. Oh, no wonder. Of course you thought that because look at your childhood. Look at how you were raised. Oh, no wonder. I was able to have compassion for myself. So because I was able to have compassion for myself, I was able to see that ugly, painful truth. So we all have these like ugly, icky, yucky, painful truths that we don't want to look at, that we drink alcohol, we
yeah.
smoke weed, we play
Yeah.
video games. We like I have zero judgment. Like we numb, we escape. We have the best culture for distraction, right?
Yeah.
We do
Mhm.
everything not to feel the pain. Yet
Yeah.
the pain is actually our friend. The pain is actually the key to our liberation. The pain is like, oh my gosh, if we could let ourselves feel, if we could let ourselves cry and get pissed off, the other side is glory. The other side is liberation. The other side is like amazing. But the reason why so many of us can't go through the pain is because we lack compassion. We lack compassion for ourselves. Like compassion is like the epidural. It's oh, once we have the compassion, okay, I can have this baby. Oh, I can see this truth. Oh, I can go through this. And so if we're able to offer compassion for each other, if we're able to offer compassion for ourselves, and then it's okay, this is a really painful truth, but I can go through it now. Does that make sense?
Totally. And what's so interesting as you were sharing that is that I think a lot of people, I was just reflecting obviously I've been exposed to this and understanding this myself. And we've had conversations about this, but the self compassion is such a, I think it's like another step in compassion because some people, not all people, but some people can get, okay, I can have compassion for others. I think in our society, there's a lot of people that don't have that gene at all or whatever is happening that they're able to get there. But people can get to the oh, I have compassion for this person, but self-compassion, it's really being able to remove that beating yourself up, right? It's being able to remove that judgment on yourself, and that's next level compassion. And a lot of people can't get to that place. How and I obviously, I know it takes work, but how do you help people get to that next step?
Oh, such a good question. And it's really simple. I love that you say that because you're so right. It really is. I think in a way it's beautiful if you look at it that I know for myself, it's so much easier for me to have compassion for you, Maria. It's a lot
Mhm.
harder for me to have compassion for Mandy. Like I can
Yeah.
kick Mandy's butt.
Yeah.
I would
Mhm.
never do that to you. And so it is part of our healing and our work. So it's very, I share with my clients and my friends, it's so normal that that's harder. Part of having more self-compassion, a very simple way, and this is something that I love and I'm so passionate about, is to tell your story. This is why support groups are very healing. So Brene Brown, my future bestie, Brene Brown, just gonna put it
Yeah.
out there.
Me too.
Maria, let's hang out with Brene Brown.
Yeah.
So Brene Brown, she says that shame needs three ingredients to live. It needs secrecy, silence, and judgment. So if we want to have compassion, we need to start talking about it. So if you look at 12-step programs, or you look at support groups, and you look at
Mhm.
how are they been effective? They've been effective because people are sharing their story. So if you have an area of your life that you lack compassion in, I guarantee you it's because you're not talking about it. You're not sharing the story. If you got into a support group or if you got a coach or a therapist, if you shared with a trusted friend, "Hey, I've been going through this," that shame would be lifted. If you were like, "God, I'm so embarrassed I filed bankruptcy. I'm so embarrassed I'm considering divorce. I'm so embarrassed I don't know how to handle this with my child." You don't know how many I don't have children of my own, but you don't know how many
Mhm.
parents I coach where they have so much shame around parenting their children. I'm like, "Yo, there's a reason why I didn't have any. That's hard. It's hard."
Mhm.
And I don't know any parent that doesn't struggle, especially now. And I'm like, "You guys should all get together and just
Right.
share, hey, this is really hard." So part of the self-compassion, it really comes from sharing your story with other people who are safe and other people who can validate your pain and validate and hear you and see you and understand you. And that's part of the medicine. That's part of, okay, now I'm going to start being kind to myself. The worst place you can stay is like in between your ears by yourself. That's why isolation is so dangerous.
Yeah.
That's why solitary confinement in prisons is one of the worst things you can do psychologically to
Mhm.
us human beings
Mhm.
because we're not involved enough. Unless you're an enlightened master, right? Hashtag goals. Unless you're an
Mhm.
enlightened master, maybe the Dalai Lama would be okay in
Yeah.
solitary confinement. But you
Yeah.
put any of us in solitary confinement, that's no bueno.
Yeah. Wow, that's just as you were explaining that and as you were sharing that, I've seen so many places where there's this gap for this psychological safe spaces. And even like in workplaces now, they're talking about that. God, having these psychological safe spaces for people to be able to open and remove the shame and guilt, even about things like I'm dyslexic or whatever in the workplace or whatever the situation is. But what's coming to me is it's so simple in so many different places that it's like the cure and the medicine is exactly the same in all these things that are happening in our society with everything. It's if we could only have that compassion in all places, if we could only provide that safe space for people to be able to tell their story without the shame, because it's almost not having the safe space is why people put up that wall, why people put up that, "I don't want anybody to know."
Exactly.
And I it just that just came so clear to me, which sounds so stupid because it's so simple, but we have such a hard time doing that.
The truth is simple. The truth is
Yeah,
simple. You think of Leonardo da Vinci. Do you know that still today, Leonardo da Vinci has the most famous artwork like of all time? There's no competition of the Mona
yeah,
Lisa.
yeah,
Like, it's no contest. And
yeah,
Leonardo da Vinci said, "The ultimate sophistication lies in simplicity." The truth is always simple.
yeah.
It's our egoic minds that always try to
Mm,
complicate things. That's why, like, when I teach coaches, so I've got my own framework that I teach coaches. It's called the strawberry shift. I got a strawberry tattoo. You see it? Like it?
I love it. Shit, okay.
It's called the strawberry shift. And I called it the strawberry shift because strawberries symbolize, and this is going to sound like grandiose, but hear me out. Strawberries symbolize the zeal of God. Whoa. So,
Oh,
what does that
yeah.
mean? It means enthusiasm for love. So, what does that mean? Enthusiasm for love. The reason why so many of us are in pain is because we forgot how to love each other. It's so simple,
Mhm,
right? It's like the coaching industry got so complicated and everybody just got so stuck up here. And I
mhm.
realized, Maria, what's the big difference between what I do and what so many other coaches do? I love my clients with enthusiasm. That's it.
Yeah,
Like, I'm not afraid to love them with enthusiasm.
yeah.
So many people, they're afraid to love. And part of that wall, like you talked about, part of the reason why people are so terrified is because of trauma.
Yeah.
It's because it's a survival response. And so this is why it's so important. And this is why one of the kindest things and one of the most bravest things and one of the most courageous things we can do is to heal ourselves. So when we set ourselves free, we're giving each other permission and we can help each other. And so that's why you and I working on ourselves, like it's not just for Maria, it's not just for Mandy, like we're like the ripple. We don't even know the
Yes.
ripple effect
Yeah.
that we're making by setting ourselves free and taking care of ourselves. Like I know when I have my therapy session with my therapist and I'm healing Mandy, I know that's impacting my nieces and nephews and my clients and
Mhm.
everyone else and the mailman and everybody I'm waving to and everyone I'm like, because that's the ripple effect,
Ripple
right?
effect, yeah.
And so the reason why this is so hard is because of that trauma. And so it's so important to understand that we can't force this. That what's important is to focus back on ourselves and to be able to do the work ourselves and not get distracted with trying to save the world. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yeah, totally, and I think that's a really good thing to keep in mind and keep yourself centered and grounded because I think it can be very overwhelming. I know I can get that way from time to time, and people can get that way with everything happening in our world, in our society. Oh my god, it's just too much. But if you think about working on yourself, that impact that has, that's what you can do, right? There's so many things that are out of our control. Like we can't change everyone, but if we change ourselves and we work on ourselves and grow, that has that could be the catalyst for someone else. You ever see that commercial? God, it was a while ago, but it was like just one act of kindness. And it's like somebody witnesses it and then they watch that and then they go and do an act of kindness and then they go and do an act of kindness. And it shows this small gesture, how it can grow. I think that that's a really good thing to keep in mind because otherwise it feels like sometimes that what can I do? What impact can I have? That can have a huge impact. We just have to remember it and do it.
Exactly. I love that. I love that. I had a mentor of mine say instead of survival of the fittest, now it's really about the survival of the kindest.
Kindest.
Yeah.
Love it. I have a question for you as you were talking about trauma and this is just my thought and observation. I feel like we are at a place where we're starting to hear more. More and more people are starting to understand what trauma is, understand the impact it can have by not dealing with it or dealing with it. And I'm curious if you believe that also to be true. And if you have hope, because that makes me hopeful that we could educate more and more people to be able to do the work and change. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I am so glad that that the word is at least getting talked about. I don't
Mhm.
think that people still understand what it is.
Yeah.
And I am grateful. I got to give a shout out. I always believe in giving credit where credit is due. One of my mentors, Dr. Gabor Mate, he is a world renowned trauma expert, and he wrote a great book called The Myth of Normal. And he talks a lot about trauma. And what he says that trauma isn't someone punching you. Trauma isn't the sexual abuse or the assault or even someone yelling at you. Trauma is the disconnect from your true self. Trauma is, he says, if you've ever said yes when you wanted to say no, that's trauma. If you ever
Mhm.
had a gut instinct of, oh, I shouldn't do this, but you do it anyways, that's a sign of trauma. And so we all have, I say that we're all on the spectrum. There's people
Mhm.
who think, I've had clients where I don't have any trauma. And I'm like, are you a human being on planet Earth?
Yeah.
Like, we're
Yeah.
not in the Garden of Eden. We all have a certain level of trauma. And so it's about becoming aware of it. And one of my favorite quotes is awareness is the only tool required for authentic transformation. The only tool. Once we become aware, the light bulb comes on. You can't unring
Right.
the bell. You are forever transformed. You don't have to do anything about it. You become aware. And then you become like, I know for myself, when I became aware of some of my trauma from my childhood, when I become triggered, because what is a trigger is an
Mhm.
upset from our past. I became, oh, that's little Mandy. Okay, now I can be responsible. Think of that word responsibility. It's my ability to respond. I have
Mhm.
more of an ability to respond because I understand my trauma. I have more of my antennas up. I understand my triggers. I understand. I still feel it. I'm still human. I still cry. I still curse. I still feel anger. At the same time, though, I don't, I'm much better now at not sending the text right away or not
Mhm.
flipping someone off right away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's the ability to respond. So, yeah, I love that we're recognizing that trauma is a real thing. My hope and intention is that we recognize what really is trauma
Yeah.
and what do we need to do about it. And what I believe we need to do about it is we need to provide a safe place for
Yep.
us to be ourselves. We need to provide it. We need to know how to connect with each other. Like we're really it's so weird that we're so advanced with technology and now, like, AI and everything, like, we're, like, super, super sonic intelligent with all of this technology and advanced with
Mhm.
that, but we're remedial when it comes to emotional intelligence and communication and relationships, like, we've gone, like, backward, and so my hope and intention is that we can learn how to communicate again, we can learn how to connect.
I agree with you that I think, and I believe me, I've questioned myself on this. Is it that there's more information about it? Are we getting educated, or is it just that I'm in space where I'm hearing that? But I think the conversations are happening. But I would agree that a lot of people still think, oh, I wasn't sexually abused. There was no domestic violence in my house. Was it? It can be something completely different, and that's the misunderstanding, I think, and the misconception. I actually had another guest on a few weeks ago, and she's a neurodiversity coach, but she was talking about trauma and the aspect of something as simple as a request can be received. It's like in a family was the scenario she was given. In a family can be received so differently because of trauma. It's these triggers. So somebody could ask one person to say, would you empty the dishwasher? Would you empty the dishwasher? Okay, sure, no problem. And another really, why are you telling me what to do? And it's, wait a minute, it's two worlds. And it's because each person has a different ground and experience, and there must be some trauma that's triggering that response that's not warranted, right? Like from the outside world, that's not warranted, but it's a trigger. And I think, I don't know if you said it to me, but it's every, or somebody else, but every trigger is like a data point and information to something to be addressed. Understand it, right?
Yes. Yeah, I love Dr. Mate says, like, so many people are focused on triggers, and a lot of people like, "You triggered me," or "That was triggering," and a lot of people they're talking about triggers, which is good. It's good that we're talking about triggers. It's good to let people know if you're triggered, but what's happening a lot in our culture is people are stopping at triggers. "You triggered me," or "I'm triggering." Wait a minute. That's not where the magic is. The
Yeah.
magic that's not where the healing is, and
It's to look within.
Dr. Mate talks about, like, the metaphor of triggers, like, on a gun, like, the trigger is a really small part of it. It's a small like, the
Mm,
trigger is a small part. That's not where the power is. That's not
mm.
where the trigger is just an indication of where the wound is. So it's
That's
like
good
trigger
illustration.
is so it's, "Oh, this is where." So when I get triggered and one of my clients is like what we've talked about in our work together, my clients get triggered and they judge it like, "Oh, this is so silly." I'm like, "It doesn't matter. I don't care what the trigger is. It's an indication of the big wound underneath. And that's what we want to work on. That's because it's not going to go away. And so it doesn't matter if it's your spouse or your children or your boss or your coworker. If someone's pissing you off, they are your greatest teacher.
Yeah.
They are the ones going, "Hey, you got this wound that you need to heal." Now, it doesn't feel good. And trust me, again, I'm human and I don't like being triggered. I think that would be weird to say I enjoy being triggered. Like, enjoy healing my wounds because that decreases my triggers.
Yeah. Yeah, and it almost neutralizes them, right? So they
Yeah,
don't charge anymore.
e-
Yeah,
exactly.
I agree. So I have a question to you about in knowing you, and you talk a lot about intuition, right? And trusting your intuition and using that. And I know that's your mission, right? To empower people to stop giving their power away, trust their intuition, trust their knowing to guide them. How do you believe intuition is a valuable asset? And how do you suggest we cultivate that, or how do you guide people to cultivate that in themselves?
What's really interesting, have you heard of Rick Rubin? Do you know who Rick Rubin is?
Yes.
Yeah, the famous music producer. He wrote a really great book. I forget actually what it's called. It's his latest book on creativity. And he does a way better job explaining about nature and intuition. And one of the reasons why for your listeners who don't know who Rick Rubin is, he's one of the most popular, well-known music producers of our time. Like he helped produce from Lady Gaga to Johnny
Yep.
Cash to Red Hot
Yeah.
Chili Peppers.
Mhm.
And he's got this amazing music studio in Malibu called Shangri-La. And he does this very, like, eccentric experience he does with musicians where he, like the Shangri-La is all white, and he has these cleaners come in and clean it and make it be super pristine, and there's no, like, art or no noise on the wall, there's no distractions, and it's, like, up nature, and anyways, he talks about how important it is to be out in nature and how it's one of the best ways to get back in alignment and back in touch with our intuition. And he credits to like people are wondering like how does he help these musicians come up with these hit songs? And so when I work with entrepreneurs who are trying to like force all these ideas that are going to be viral or I want to make $1 million, I want to do it. And they're trying to hurry and they're trying to force. And it's so interesting because the people that I work with, like it the medicine, you if you will, the advice I usually give, they don't like because it's counterintuitive. It's usually needing to slow down. I when I bring my buddy Einstein into the conversation, people
Mhm.
usually tend to listen. Right? 'Cause I say,
Mhm.
I go, "Do you think it's interesting? One of the greatest minds of our time said that intuition is the most powerful tool." And it's like, how do we connect with our intuition? One of the reasons why we're so disconnected from our intuition is because we're disconnected from nature. If you think about it, before the industrial revolution, we relied on our gut instinct. And if you
Yeah.
about it, think about music and art and writing. Like we were really good at it. We were like the best music, the best art, the best writing. It was before the industrial revolution. We were
Yeah.
connected. Right? Now we're disconnected. So what do we need to do? This is why like grounding and why now we're getting involved in like yoga and breath work. And this is why it's so important because when we do align, whatever is meant to be for you and whatever is your highest calling it'll be natural. It'll just come. You don't have to willpower. You don't have to force it. And so that's what I do with my clients is I help them with their self-care and getting back
Yeah.
in touch with nature and getting back in touch with slowing down. And some of them do it kicking and screaming, but that's what creates the shift. Because once we align with that, man, and that's also when we start having fun. Because this
Yeah.
whole Starbucks on every corner and we're drinking liquid crack in a can at the gas station. Go, this
Mhm.
that culture, like, it doesn't work. That's not how we get to greatness. That's not when we come up with the brilliant ideas that leave a legacy.
Yeah. It's so interesting as you were sharing that. I had a mentor years ago, and she was an older woman, and she was totally like Zen master, yogi, and I learned so much from her. But anytime at that time, I was not an entrepreneur. I was working in the corporate world, and I would talk about, and what I wanted to comment on here is that our culture and that our the business world is so counter to what you just described, right? And it's like, again, it's that hustle thing, but it's difficult when you're in that world to pull yourself out of that. I think it's more challenging because there's so much battling of that way. And she used to say, when I would you comment about how it was, and yeah, that's how that world is, and you signed up for that. And it wasn't in a nasty way she was saying it, but it was almost helping me understand that I had the choice to be in it or out of it, right?
Mm.
And I think that's something we all have to keep front and center because it can be so easy to get sucked into that. Go, let me have my Starbucks, let me drink my Prime, let me do this, let me go. I'm gonna go, no sleep. We gotta get this done, like all of this. And there's many people, myself included, I've been in those pockets where it's like, when was the last time I just went outside and went for a walk in nature? Do we do that? Do we regularly do that? Even if you're an active person, are you experiencing nature? Are you putting your feet in the grass? Or are you just jogging for 10 miles in the city? That's not the same. I think that it's important to keep that in mind that it can suck you in. Our culture can suck you in so easily. And you really have to take that time and make that commitment to be able to immerse yourself in nature, to be grounded, to be connected to the earth, all those things that help you align.
Well, and you bring up a really powerful point because one of the reasons why we get sucked in, and you're absolutely right, is because of our human need as human beings to connect with one another. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm creating a community for coaches is because one of the things I learned from my mentor, Dr. Mate, is that we have two psychological human needs. We have the need for attachment, and this is like survival. Like we have to have the need. Many people are aware of the need for belonging. They've done studies on babies, right? Like you can change the baby's diaper, you can feed the baby, but if you don't hold, the baby will
Maybe.
literally die, right? Like we have to attach. And so we will do crazy stuff. I was almost going to cuss on your show.
It's okay. It's been done
Okay.
before.
Okay. We will do crazy stuff as human beings to attach because we have to survive that attachment relationship. So whoever's our caretaker, mother, father, whoever we perceive to be our caretaker. And then when we grow up, so our survival relationships, our spouse, our children, our coworkers, our boss, We will do whatever it takes to survive those attachment relationships, our closest friends. But what Dr. Monte says, we also have another human need, which is authenticity. To thy own
Mhm.
self be true. And this is where it gets messy, right?
Yeah.
Because usually we sacrifice, and this is what I've experienced and what I think almost every single human being experiences on a certain degree, is we sacrifice our authenticity in order
Mhm.
to have the attachment relationship. And this is why I became such a really good people pleaser, really good at it because I'm like, oh, look at all the love and attention and connection I got. Everybody loves Mandy. Yay. But then Mandy's getting these awful migraines. It's like, crap,
Mm.
I'm crap. How do I fix this? Because everybody, I got all these attachment relationships, but yet I want to die because I'm going through all this physical pain because I'm not being true to myself. So now I'm starting to be true to myself and it's, uh-oh, I'm starting to piss people off. Uh-oh, I'm starting to lose these relationships. And so this is where it is hard. I'm not going to lie. It's
Mhm.
not easy. I'm not going to pour pink paint over it. But this is why we need support to grow. This is
Yeah.
why this path of growth is not for the faint of heart. This is why
No.
it's not easy. And this is why I always encourage people like of course I'm a coach. I believe in coaching. This is why I believe in having a coach, having a therapist, having a support group, having good friends. We need as much support because we live in a culture and we live on a planet that makes this growth of authenticity really hard.
Yes.
So you need to surround yourself, put yourself like in a bubble of people who are going to be like, yes, be yourself. Yes, you could do this. Yes, you got this when you're transitioning because it's going to be challenging. If you're trying to
Yeah.
do it alone, and that's the mistake, Maria, that I see and witness so many people make. Because, like you said, I loved your words that you used, sucked in. And,
Mhm.
and if people think they're going to try and do this alone, it ain't going to work because that psychological, that lizard brain of survival, you're going to get sucked right back in. If you think you're going to do it without a coach, without a therapist, without friends, without support, it's not going to work.
It's definitely something to understand, and I think when people understand that, then they can say, "Okay, then I get why I need support. I get why I need someone. I need guidance. I need all that." But it's like understanding what you just described is such a critical step to be able to surrender to that, that you actually need to have people help you on that journey. And I think a lot of people do try to do it alone. They try to do it in
Yeah.
private.
It's not, and that is where it's dangerous, and I think that's where most and I think that's the mistake, and that's where I wanna just scream from the rooftop that you're not meant to do this alone, and you know what penguins do when one of the penguins are sick? Do you know what they do?
Yeah. What?
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. When a penguin is sick or even grieving, they're like one of the coolest animals. They will
Really?
surround that penguin, like in a circle. So if one of the penguins is sick or grieving, they will surround that penguin. And if that's what we need to be doing for each other, that's what we did. That's what
Yeah.
like indigenous tribes do. That's what we used to do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now if someone's grieving, if someone has a lost one or someone's going through grief, we're like, "Oh god, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do." We're scared of that pain. We're scared because we're
Mm,
scared of it for ourselves. And it's part of it that I believe that what we're starving for is just that real human connection and that real and that space just to be vulnerable, that space just to be real, that space just to say, I'm scared, that space to say, I'm pissed off, that space to say, I don't know what I'm doing, just to
mm.
be able to be real and to be seen, heard, and understood. We all need it.
Yeah. I think also, I loved your thoughts on this. I often am concerned where people can also be tricked into thinking that the connection is the connections they have through social media, which is what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Right? Not real true connection. And I don't want to pigeonhole the younger generation. Obviously, they are at a higher risk probably because they were raised with this. It's such a part of their life. we've all been exposed and sucked in by that as well. And I'd love your thoughts. You ensure that you're not thinking that you have a support group or you have something that can help you that is really just surface level social media, these online communities. Like how do you navigate that? And what are your thoughts about that? And what do people need to keep in mind?
I think that honestly, I think social media can be a really wonderful tool. I think
Agree.
it can it's neutral. It's like money. It's like money isn't evil and money isn't great.
Mhm.
It's neutral, right? It's social media isn't evil and it isn't positive. It's neutral. Social media has helped me a lot.
Yes.
And I've seen social media also cause a lot of damage. So it's I would say it's really simple. How you know that social media and how you know that it's actually working for you is how you feel. How are you
Mhm.
emotionally feeling? Like, I
Mhm.
have a really good buddy. I've actually never met him. I actually met him in a community that I joined almost 2 years ago. He lives in Oregon and he's one of like my new best friends. And he's just like a beautiful soul. And he has heard me cry and like snot come out my nose cry. And
Mhm.
he knows me. Like he
Mhm.
knows me. And we've never met in person. We've met on Zooms that is real. Like, we have a connection, this other human being and I who've never met in person, and we've talked on the phone, and he has heard some of my pain that I've gone through where it's like those cries that the snot's coming out and you got and then they don't even understand what you're saying because you're going, that is when you know you found a real connection. That's when you know the social that is it has to go offline. If it's just serving you, it's like the menu bar when you go to a restaurant where you gotta order the food at the bar, but then you
Mhm.
go to the table to eat it, right?
Mhm.
Social media is like the bar where you go to order, right? You're looking for people to connect with,
Yes.
then you go back to your life and you're connecting with them. If you haven't found anybody that you can like snug cry with, then you haven't found the connection. That's how Maria. You gotta
Good.
find the
Yeah.
snot cry friend.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. I agree with you on that. That's the beauty. It's almost like social media can be the conduit to make the connection, right?
You for
Then
your
it's
you
like
still get her words.
take it off, and look at the beauty of that. You're able to connect with these people that don't live in the same place. They might not even live in the same country, right? But then taking it offline to be able to go off that platform and really make tight connection. And I would agree that there's people that could find people that they never would have found without it. So that's the beautiful part of it. But yeah, thinking of it as the conduit,
Mhm. I
right?
love that word. Thank you for that word, conduit.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly it. Social media conduit for connection. We just have to learn how to use it. Yes.
Agree. And I agree with you. It's not good or bad. It's because it can bring good. It's neutral. It can bring good. It can bring bad. But it's really being mindful of how you're using it and all of that. But one further point, and then I want to a little more about the understand.me. But I wanted to comment. I was having a conversation with actually a therapist, and we were talking about just this space where, where there were these young males, college age, high school, college age, and struggling with their own self worth because of whether it was ADHD or dyslexia or learning differences or whatever it was. And she was like, it would be so great if they could all find a support group to share their stories because so much of it when they're in it, this young man she was talking about is I'm the only one that has these things happening. I'm the only one that feels this way. And when you were talking earlier about sharing your story and having that safe space to be able to say, this is what's happening for me. And even you mentioned the 12 step programs, you start to see that it's not just you. And that provides that safe space for you to be able to say, okay, I can address this now. I don't have to be shameful about it. So it's just another comment I was thinking as we were talking about that. Having that ability to have those support groups in all the spaces, all the safe spaces is just like a mission. It's like a mission for all of us to provide that because there are so many gaps where that we don't have that, and I think that could be so helpful to so many people.
Oh, it's medicine, it's medicine. Anybody
Yeah.
listening, I guarantee you whatever shame you have about yourself, I promise you there is not just one other human being that has that same shame. There are thousands, if not maybe even millions. And if you
Mhm.
can just connect and
Mm,
share your story. Like I'm in a 12-step support group for something that I had so much shame and so much self-loathing about. And I saw all these other beautiful people that had the same problem that I had. And because I fell in love with them, and I was
mhm.
like, oh, I love them. Oh, I don't want Sarah to beat herself up. And Sarah has the same problem I have. So guess what happens? I start loving Mandy because I don't want Sarah to beat
Yeah.
herself up. And I get protective of Sarah, so I'm like, "Oh," and I see Frank, and I'm like, "Hey, Frank, you watch it, buddy. I love you, Frank," right? And so then I start, "Well, wait a minute. They have what I if I'm gonna put myself down, that means I'm putting them down." And so something very healing happened. So this is why people and I know Hollywood makes fun of support groups and people poo them, and a lot of
Mhm.
marketers, frankly, in our, like, space
Yes.
shame them and condemn them, but really, I have to say as a coach, and this is like me saying as a coach, I have received way more help and transformation by being
Mm,
in a support group that I pay $3 a
yep.
meeting. It has
Mhm.
been very transformational. So there's something that does happen by the power of sharing your story. So I just encourage people, like it's extremely healing.
So I definitely want to get into a little more about understand.me and understand.me. I want to know what led you to create, which is really a website specializing in these personal assessments. You have things like DISC and Enneagram and Strength Finder and love languages. And could you share a little bit about that? What led you to it? And maybe even a little bit about some of those assessments and why you love them so much or what they could provide.
Oh, yes. First, I gotta give credit to my buddy Russell Brunson. This
Mhm,
is his brainchild. He came up with the
mhm,
vision years ago. He's Mandy, what do you think? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And of course, he's the visionary behind Understand.me. And because he was like, I want to put all of these assessments together because Russell and I would geek out on assessments together. And I took DISC 23 years ago. A man by the name of
mhm,
Robert Alderman taught me DISC and it changed my life. I always credit him because I wouldn't have been able to be a coach because I was 21. I knew nothing about life and no one would have taken me seriously as a coach had I not learned DISC. And I learned DISC and because I learned it so well, like I mastered DISC, I was able to build trust and rapport with my client. I was able to understand my clients in a way that I would not have been able to understand them had I not had that assessment. And so
mhm,
that's where I fell in love with assessments. And then fast forward years later, I got exposed to Myers Briggs and I found,
yeah,
oh, isn't this interesting? This covers something different than DISC does. And then Strengths Finder. And I got exposed to that. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is covering a different angle that Myers-Briggs and DISC isn't, and then Enneagram. And so I
mhm.
really love them all. People always ask me, Mandy, what's your favorite
What's your
assessment? I'm like,
favorite
that's like asking a parent who's your favorite
favorite
child.
child?
Right?
Yeah,
Yes. I really love them because they're like putting all the puzzle pieces together. And especially as a coach, I really like using them to help people see who they are, to see their greatness, as well as to see where they need to work and where are some of their blind spots and where and how to take care of themselves. This is understand.me is a great tool to help inspire you as well as to help educate you and help to raise your own self-awareness on how to take care of yourself, mind, body, and soul. Most of us, we don't even know. Like I ask people, how do you recharge your batteries? You don't know how many clients, Maria, I've had where I've asked them, how do you recharge your batteries? And they're like, watch Netflix.
yeah,
And I'm like, I love Netflix. I'm a big fan of Netflix, but that's not how you recharge your batteries. That's not how you recharge your soul. How do you recharge your soul? This is where we need to become aware. And so this is why I love this. And people are one of my favorite things about it is it usually relieves shame because usually what we're beating ourselves up about,
Yep.
like I'm not very detail oriented. I had a lot of
Mhm.
shame about not being detail oriented.
Yep.
It sucked at admin work, any of that. And I used to think I was dumb because I wasn't good at those details. When I took these assessments, I realized, oh, no wonder I make such a great coach because all these assessments point to being so relational. Oh, no wonder I'm really good at this and I suck at that. It's liberating, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. To say, I'm gonna give you props here. I had taken DISC so long ago, but when you did my DISC assessment and explained it to me at such a deep level, you are definitely the master. I had
Oh,
such a
thank you.
deeper understanding of myself because you went so deep, and it was like and it really truly is. I could say and I've been exposed to all of them, and even one that I've used called Social Styles. I don't know if you ever heard of that one, but I've used that in training. Yeah, that's an interesting one too. But all of them giving you the understanding of who you are, and I also think my experiences, I think our egotistical thinks, "Oh, I'm that. I wanna be this." We think one type is better than the other, right? I'm sure people react like that all the time, and then you get to that place where you're like, "No, it's all good. It's just we all have a different niche. We all have a different quadrant. We all have a different strength. We all have a different place." And like you said, I could relate as well. I used to beat myself up about not being good at certain things, but it's okay because I have a strength that balances that, and I just have to be in that sweet and have that acceptance about it.
Oh, I love that you bring that up. It's very common. It's very common and very natural for people to have strength envy or personality envy. Like
Mhm.
you're a high dominant person. And I find that a lot of people in this subculture of especially like marketers and entrepreneurs, I'm a low dominant personality and a lot of people wish they were high dominant like you because a lot of the successful examples are very dominant personalities. And
Yeah.
so there's so many people that they're like, "Oh, I should be like Maria. I need to be dominant. I need to be and it's wait a minute. No, you have a different role. You're going to have a different approach. You have a different style. And I like to use animals because animals are fun and
Mhm.
animals keep us lighthearted. I like to use the metaphor of a penguin in the desert. I'm like, are you gonna blame the penguin? Are you gonna beat up the penguin that he can't hang out in the desert? Like, he's meant to be in the Arctic. He's not meant to be in the desert.
Right.
Meant to be in the Arctic. Like, we're all meant to I when I was in high pressured sales, I was getting migraines. I was so miserable, and I was forcing myself to be a high dominant person. Now, a high dominant person, I worked with high dominant people in that sales job. They loved it. They crushed it. They were living the dream. It was so natural. It was so draining to me and I dreaded it and I had knots in my stomach and I was popping Excedrin like Tic Tacs. I was trying to be
Mm.
someone that I wasn't. And so this is why I love these assessments is because they liberate us. Because oh, just tell me like who I am so I can be when we're in our right environment, we are good. We are happy.
Mhm.
We are
Yeah.
free.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and like I said, a lot of these assessments are similar, right? They all have their own different kinda take or different kind of description, but they're all similar in some ways, and social styles, that's one that I used in training a lot when I do team building, and where it really focuses more on how you communicate, and so what's your social style? And similar to DISC in some ways because you have the expressive, it's very gesture-oriented, and happy and enthusiastic and gets excited and passionate. And then you have the analytical, it's got to have the data, right? And then you have the steady, which is again very like disc, very almost the mediator a lot of times, right? And the neutral. And same thing would happen in the room with these people when they would assess, they had that envy, that type envy. And what I would do with them is have them try to sit side of their style to see if they could take on a different style. And it was so uncomfortable for them. But what it translated for them is to understand that. being in your style is where your natural place is. But if you're communicating to someone from another style, you've got to have the compassion and understanding of what they're looking for. So if I'm
Uh,
communicating to an analytical and I'm going to be expressive and I'm not going to give them data, I'm not closing the deal or convincing them, or
right.
I'm not my boss, I'm making a case, I'm not going to be able to do that. Where vice versa, if the analytical person is just boring, gives me the details to the expressive, it's not going to work. So that's what I think is so interesting, not only understanding yourself, but understanding how all these different types interact was always it was such an animated exercise and experience for them. So I love any of that. And I think this is great that people can get that understanding. I have my whole team taking these, by the way.
Love it. Oh,
All of
we
them.
need to do a session, Maria, with your whole
Yeah.
team. Let's do because
Yeah.
having it's one of the best ways for your team to bond is to
Mhm.
I'd be happy to go over because going over and having someone like myself read their understand about me profiles and like understand I'm a geek at it. So I love geeking out about it. And yeah, it's very insightful. And then it helps each other go, oh, that's why Maria does this, or
And
that's why Marvin does that. That's why so and
yes.
so is that way. And then
Yeah,
you don't take things as personal. You're like,
exactly.
well, that's why they're that way.
I love that. Yeah, I would love that. They would love that. It's definitely highly recommend all of that and know thyself. Like I keep coming to me what you said earlier. Being able to have that deep understanding is so valuable. So I have one final question for you as we wrap. I think that everyone being able to take steps to do the work and get to that place where they can grow, all of that. And obviously there's probably a lot of people who are inspired by this conversation. And what would you recommend resources, recommendations for any of them who want to delve deeper into their own personal empowerment or self development growth? What is, because there's a lot, there's so much out there. Like there's so many places to go. Obviously, understand that me, that would be a great place to start.
Yes.
But
Yes.
what else or what other recommendations would you have for somebody who's that journey or wants to delve deeper?
It's such a good question. I have a favorite book I just finished reading and I can't shut up about it just because I think it's something especially for all of us entrepreneurs and especially in our fast-paced culture. And it's the opposite of what so many people are sharing. And it's by one of my other future besties. His name's Richard Rudd. And he wrote a great book called The Art of Contemplation because I feel like and it's such a beautiful book. And he's a writer and he's also like a poet. And so the book is just so delicious. Like you read it and it's just really well written and it's a small book but he talks about the value of pausing and the value of slowing down. And I feel the best gift that you can give yourself, especially in our just overstimulated, fast-paced culture, is to do that. Like I was just getting gas the other day and I was contemplating something. I was contemplating about this trade. I'm going to be giving a coach training tonight. And I was contemplating an idea and I was when you're like putting the puzzle pieces together for something and you get excited about it. And then this like loud like guy comes on the screen at the gas pump and like totally interrupts my train of thinking. And I got annoyed because I was like, oh my gosh, I was just like about to put these puzzle pieces together. And it just reminded me of how hard it is in our culture to slow down and to contemplate and to pause and how we've got to be like rebel. We've got to be
Yes.
like it
Yes.
takes like a courageous rebellious spirit to slow down and contemplate and pause because we live in a culture that is constantly vying for our attention and constantly wanting us to go. And so I
Yeah.
would say I would highly recommend this book. I've read so many books. It's one of my favorites. I would say I feel just my heart says to start there. And yeah, this
Mhm.
has been fun, Maria. I'm bummed. It flew by
I
so
know. We might have to do a part 2. We'll see.
part two. Yeah.
But what we will do is we'll put that book in the show notes and put also understand.me, if that's okay, in the show notes
Yes,
as well.
absolutely.
And this way you can find that and get access to that there. Mandy, thank you so much. I had a blast today. Thank you for
Me
joining
too.
me. So, thank you everybody for listening or watching. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Finding the Upside. Thank you.